For thousands of years, the Galactic Empire ruled most of the known galaxy. Thousands of alien worlds obeyed its laws. Massive fleets protected its borders. Its technology was far ahead of every other civilization. Because of this, the Empire believed something very simple. Nothing could challenge them. No enemy had ever defeated an Imperial fleet. No civilization had ever survived after declaring war on the Empire. Over time, this power created something dangerous: confidence. And slowly, that confidence turned into arrogance. Inside the massive Imperial command station, which floated near the edge of Imperial territory, hundreds of officers worked quietly at their stations. The station was a giant metal structure orbiting a yellow star. It watched over one of the most important space routes in the Empire. Most days were calm. Trade ships passed by. Military patrols reported normal activity. Nothing unusual ever happened here. Until that day, a young sensor officer named Roland sat in front of a long scanner console. His job was simple: watch the long-range sensors and report anything unusual. Usually that meant nothing more than asteroids or merchant ships. But suddenly, a small signal appeared on his screen. At first, it looked weak. Just one object. Raylan frowned. "That's strange," he muttered quietly. He leaned closer to the screen and adjusted the scanner settings. The signal became clearer. His eyes narrowed. The object was not small. It was huge. Raylan increased the scanner zoom. The image slowly formed on the holographic display above his console, and when he saw it clearly, his heart skipped a beat. The object was not an asteroid. It was not a space station. It was a warship. A massive warship. But something about it made no sense. Raylan quickly checked the navigation logs. No warp signature. No hyperspace jump. No arrival signal. Nothing. According to the sensors, the warship had simply appeared. One moment space was empty. The next moment the ship was there. Raylan's hands moved quickly across the console. He scanned again. Same result. No arrival trace. No warning. The ship had appeared as if it had always been there. His stomach tightened. "That's impossible," he whispered. He immediately opened a communication line to the command center. "Command, this is Sensor Station 7. I am detecting an unknown vessel." Within minutes, several senior officers entered the command room. A large holographic display appeared in the center of the chamber. The mysterious ship rotated slowly in the projection. The officers studied it carefully. The ship looked different from any design in the Imperial database. Its shape was sharp and aggressive. The armor plating looked extremely thick. Strange engine structures extended from the back of the vessel, and along the sides of the hull were long weapon systems the scanners could not identify. One officer crossed his arms. "What civilization built this?" Raylan spoke carefully. "We are still analyzing the data, sir." Another officer pointed toward the center of the hologram. "Zoom in on that symbol." The holographic image focused on the front of the ship. Painted across the dark metal hull was a symbol: a blue planet, white clouds, green land. One officer immediately recognized it. He laughed. "Earth." Several other officers relaxed. "So it's just a human ship." Humans were known across the galaxy. They were a young species, curious, ambitious, but still new compared to the ancient empires. The Galactic Empire had existed long before humans discovered faster-than-light travel. Compared to the Empire's power, humanity was considered small. The station commander waved his hand dismissively. "Send a patrol fleet." His voice sounded bored. "Capture the vessel and bring it here for inspection." Orders were immediately sent. A nearby patrol squadron began moving toward the strange warship. But Raylan was still watching the scanners. Something about the ship bothered him. It was alone. No escorts. No fleet. Just one ship, floating silently in space. That was strange enough. But then, something else happened. The scanner screen suddenly flickered. Several alarms began flashing. Energy readings started climbing rapidly. Raylan stared at the numbers. His face slowly turned pale. The power levels coming from the ship were rising fast, much higher than any normal warship. He checked the readings again. Then again, the numbers kept increasing. Around the room, other officers noticed the alarms. "What is happening?" one asked. Raylan spoke slowly. "Energy output is increasing, sir." "How much?" Raylan swallowed. Beyond standard Imperial weapon levels. Beyond standard Imperial weapon levels. Suddenly, the station computer spoke in a calm mechanical voice. Warning. Unknown weapon systems detected. The command room went silent. No one spoke. Several officers looked back at the holographic image. The warship was still there, motionless, quiet, but now everyone understood something. That ship was not ordinary. Raylan looked again at the scanners. His eyes widened. More signals were appearing, faint, but real, behind the warship. He leaned closer to the console. Then he whispered softly, "Sir." The commander looked at him. Raylan pointed at the screen. "That's out. That ship may not be alone." The command room fell into complete silence. Every officer slowly turned toward the main scanner display. The strange signals behind the warship were faint, almost invisible. At first, they looked like sensor noise. But the station's computers began analyzing the data. Then, more alarms started blinking across the room. Raylan stared at the numbers scrolling down his screen. His fingers moved quickly across the controls. The signals were growing stronger. And there were not just one or two of them. There were dozens. No. Raylan zoomed out on the long-range scanners. His heart began beating faster. There were hundreds, all of them hidden behind the same location where the human warship had appeared. How was that possible? He whispered. The commander stepped closer to the display. "Report." Raylan swallowed before answering. "Sir, there are multiple objects hiding behind the vessel." Another officer frowned. "Hiding?" "Yes, sir. Their energy signatures are extremely low, almost invisible." The computer finished its scan. A new message appeared across the holographic screen. "Unknown fleet detected." The officers looked at each other in confusion. "Fleet?" One officer repeated. Before anyone could react, a communication signal suddenly appeared on the command console. The signal was coming from the mysterious warship. The station commander crossed his arms, put it on screen. The holographic display shifted. Instead of the ship, a human face appeared. He wore a dark uniform with a silver insignia on the collar. His expression was calm. Too calm. "This is Captain Elias Ward of the human defense vessel Aegis," the man said. His voice was steady. "We are requesting that your patrol fleet stop approaching." The commander raised an eyebrow. "You are in Imperial space, human. You do not make requests here." Captain Ward looked directly into the camera. "This situation does not require conflict." Several officers in the room chuckled quietly. The Empire had heard similar words many times before, usually from civilizations that were about to surrender. The commander leaned forward slightly. "You appeared without authorization. You are surrounded by Imperial territory. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Captain Ward remained silent for a few seconds. Then he spoke again. "Please reconsider." His tone was calm, but there was something unusual in his voice. Not fear, not anger. Something else. The commander smiled slightly. "Your warning is noted." Then he turned toward another officer. "Status of the patrol fleet." 20 ships approaching, sir." The holographic display showed small Imperial warships moving through space toward the lone human vessel. Compared to the massive Imperial fleets, the patrol ships were small, but against a single ship they were more than enough. The commander looked back at the human captain. "You see, Captain Ward, your situation is already decided." Captain Ward slowly nodded. "I see." Then he spoke one final sentence. "Please tell your fleet to stop." The commander laughed. "I am afraid that will not happen." Behind the human captain, faint light suddenly appeared through the camera feed. The officers in the command room noticed it immediately. Raylan looked back at the scanner display. His eyes widened again. The faint signals behind the human ship were growing stronger, much stronger. The computer began identifying the objects. The screen filled with warning messages. Large mass detected. Additional vessels emerging. The commander turned sharply toward Raylan. "What is happening?" Raylan's voice shook slightly. "Sir, those signals, they are ships." "How many?" Raylan hesitated. The scanners continued updating the data. More shapes were appearing behind the first warship. Huge shapes, larger than Imperial cruisers. Then, even more signals appeared. And more. The computer finally finished its analysis. Raylan slowly looked up. His face had gone pale. "Sir, we are detecting over 300 vessels." The room went silent again. 300 ships could not hide behind one vessel. But somehow, they had. The holographic display zoomed out. Behind the single human warship, massive shadows began revealing themselves, ships larger than anything the Empire had seen before. Their hulls were dark and angular. Their engines glowed with deep blue energy. And they had all appeared without warp signatures. The commander stared at the display. "This is impossible," on the screen. Captain Ward spoke again. His voice was still calm. "This is your final warning. Please recall your patrol fleet." Behind him, hundreds of human warships slowly powered up their engines. Space itself seemed to glow with their energy. The commander clenched his jaw. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. No fleet had ever made them hesitate. But for the first time, something felt very wrong. The commander finally spoke. "Signal the patrol fleet." But before the order could be completed, Raylan suddenly shouted, "Sir!" Everyone turned toward him. He pointed at the scanner screen. More signals. The commander looked back at the display. New signals were appearing across nearby star systems. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. Human ships, appearing silently across Imperial space. And at that moment, the commander finally understood something terrifying. The warship that appeared out of nowhere was never alone. It was only the first one. The command room inside the Imperial station was no longer calm. Officers moved quickly between consoles. Alarms flashed across every screen. The large holographic map in the center of the room filled with new signals. Red warning symbols appeared across several nearby star systems. Raylan could barely keep up with the incoming data. "More ships detected," he said quickly. "Locations, 3 systems. No, 4, now 5 systems, sir." The commander stared at the display. Human ships were appearing across Imperial territory one after another. But the most disturbing part was not the number of ships. It was how they appeared. There were still no warp signatures, no hyperspace signals, just empty space, and then suddenly a human warship. The Empire had never seen technology like this before. One officer spoke nervously. "Sir, if they can appear anywhere like this..." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone understood what it meant. The Empire's borders suddenly meant nothing. The commander turned back toward the screen showing the human captain. Captain Elias Ward was still standing calmly. Behind him, through the camera view, hundreds of human warships floated silently. The commander spoke again. "You planned this." Captain Ward shook his head slightly. "No. You forced this." The commander's eyes narrowed. "You expect us to believe that?" Captain Ward did not answer immediately. Instead, he looked to the side for a moment, as if reading information from a screen. Then he spoke again. "For 200 years, humanity expanded peacefully. For 200 years, we respected imperial borders. For 200 years, we avoided war." The commander crossed his arms. "And?" Captain Ward looked back at the camera. "And for 200 years, the Empire watched us." He paused. "You studied our ships. You monitored our colonies. You followed every fleet we built." Several officers in the command room shifted uncomfortably, because what the humans said was true. The Empire had been watching humanity for a long time. They believed humans were ambitious, possibly dangerous in the future. So Imperial intelligence quietly studied them, but the Empire never believed humanity could become a real threat. Captain Ward continued speaking. "You believed we were a young species. You believed we were weak. And you believed we were not ready for war." The commander answered coldly. "You still are not." But Captain Ward did not look worried. Instead, he said something that made the entire room freeze. "You never asked what humanity was preparing for." Before the commander could respond, a new message appeared on the main scanner display. "Imperial patrol fleet approaching engagement range." The 20 Imperial warships were now very close to the human vessel. Their weapons were already charging. On the holographic map, bright red targeting lines locked onto the lone ship. The commander gave the order. Fire warning shots. The patrol fleet responded instantly. Several bright beams of energy shot across space toward the human vessel. The beam struck the ship directly. For a moment, the scanners were blinded by light. When the energy faded, the officers looked back at the display. The human warship was still there, completely untouched. Not even a shield ripple appeared. Raylan stared at his screen. That's not possible. He checked the readings again. The warship's shields were active, but their power levels were far beyond anything the Empire had ever recorded. One officer whispered quietly, "Those shields could stop a planetary weapon." The commander frowned. "Prepare the fleet for full attack." But before the patrol fleet could fire again, the human ship moved. Not fast. Not aggressively. Just a small movement. But the moment it did, something strange happened. Every Imperial patrol ship suddenly went dark. Weapons shut down. Engines stopped. Communications failed. On the scanner display, 20 Imperial warships drifted helplessly through space. Raylan's console filled with warning messages. Remote system interference detected. Weapons offline. Navigation failure. The commander slammed his hand on the console. "What did they do?" Raylan shook his head. "I don't know, sir. They didn't fire any weapon. They just moved." On the communication screen, Captain Ward appeared again. His expression was still calm. "We warned you." The commander clenched his fists. "You attacked Imperial ships." Captain Ward shook his head again. "No, we disabled them." His voice became slightly more serious. "Because we did not want to destroy them." The command room became silent again. The Empire had just watched 20 warships become useless without a single shot fired. And that meant something terrifying. If the humans wanted to destroy them, they probably could. Captain Ward spoke one last time. "Recall your fleets. End this now." But before the commander could respond, Raylan suddenly gasped, "Sir, new signals!" Everyone turned toward the scanners. More human ships were appearing across the sector, hundreds of them, then thousands, entire fleets emerging silently across Imperial space, and this time they were all moving toward the Empire. Inside the Imperial command station, the atmosphere had completely changed. What had started as a simple patrol incident was now becoming something far more serious. The massive holographic star map in the center of the command room continued to fill with warning signals. Red icons flashed across dozens of star systems. Human warships were appearing everywhere. Not in small groups, not in scattered patrols. Entire fleets. Raylan's hands moved rapidly across his console as new data flooded the scanners. His voice trembled slightly. "More ships confirmed, sir." The commander turned sharply. "How many now?" Raylan checked the updated readings. His eyes widened. Over 2,000 vessels, and the number is still rising. Several officers in the room exchanged worried looks. 2,000 ships was not a patrol force. It was a full military deployment, and they were all appearing silently across Imperial territory. The commander looked back at the holographic map. Human fleets were spreading across the sector like shadows. But something strange quickly became clear. They were not attacking. They were positioning themselves strategically. Human ships appeared near trade routes, near communication relays, near supply stations. They were quietly surrounding key Imperial infrastructure. One officer whispered nervously, "They are cutting off our sector." The commander clenched his jaw. "This is an act of war." He turned toward the communication console, open a direct channel to Imperial High Command. Moments later, a tall alien figure appeared on the screen. Admiral Corfan, Supreme Fleet Commander of the Galactic Empire. His deep voice filled the command room. "Report." The station commander spoke quickly. "Unknown human fleets are appearing across multiple systems. They disabled a patrol fleet without firing weapons." The admiral's expression hardened. "How many vessels?" "Over 2,000 confirmed." For the first time, Admiral Corfan looked surprised. "That is impossible." But the holographic display behind the commander showed the growing human fleet clearly. The admiral studied the map carefully. "These ships, they did not enter through normal warp routes." "No, sir." "How did they arrive?" No one answered. Because no one understood. The admiral remained silent for a moment. Then he gave a simple order. Prepare the Imperial defense fleets. Across the Empire, emergency alerts began activating. Massive Imperial shipyards started launching warships. Defense stations powered up planetary shields. For thousands of years, the Empire had controlled the galaxy through strength. Now that strength was being called upon once again. But back inside the command station, Raylan noticed something even more disturbing. The human fleets were still moving. Slowly, calmly. They were not rushing into battle, they were forming precise formations. Blocking hyperlanes, cutting communication routes, encircling Imperial fleets before they even moved. Raylan whispered quietly. They are predicting our movements. Another officer leaned over his console. How could they know Imperial defense positions? Raylan had only one answer. They have been studying us. For a long time, possibly for centuries. Meanwhile, on the main screen, Captain Elias Ward appeared once more. His image was projected across the command room again. This time, his expression looked more serious. You are preparing for war, he said calmly. The commander answered coldly. You invaded Imperial territory. Ward shook his head. No. We entered space that was already contested. That is not the same thing. The commander stepped closer to the screen. You disabled our fleet. We prevented a mistake. The commander laughed bitterly. You call this prevention? Behind Ward, through the camera feed, enormous human warships drifted silently through space. Some of them were larger than Imperial battle cruisers. Their hulls were dark. Their engines glowed with deep blue light. They looked less like ships and more like moving fortresses. Ward spoke again. For 2 centuries, humanity avoided conflict with the Empire. We respected your power, but recently your fleets have been expanding closer to our borders. The commander narrowed his eyes. So this is about territory? Ward shook his head. No, it is about survival. The room became quiet again. Explain, the commander demanded. Ward hesitated. Then he said something that confused everyone. There are things beyond the edges of this galaxy, things that destroyed civilizations far older than yours. Several officers exchanged skeptical looks. Ancient threats from outside the galaxy sounded like myths, but Ward's voice remained serious. For 200 years, humanity has been preparing for them. He looked directly at the commander. That is why our fleets exist. That is why our technology advanced. That is why we stayed quiet. The commander frowned. You expect us to believe this story? Ward answered simply, you don't have to. At that moment, Raylan suddenly shouted. Sir, everyone turned toward the scanner display. A massive signal had just appeared at the edge of the sector. Something enormous was approaching, much larger than any known warship. The computer began analyzing the signal, and when the identification finally appeared on the screen, the room went silent. Because the object was not human, and it was not Imperial, it was something else entirely, something ancient, something powerful, and it was moving directly toward the Empire. Raylan stared at the scanner screen, unable to move. The new signal continued growing larger every second. At first, it looked like a distant star, but the sensors quickly proved that was wrong. The object was moving, and it was enormous, much larger than any known warship. The computer began running identification scans, but every result came back the same. Unknown object. The commander stepped closer to the display. How big is it? Raylan checked the measurements again. His voice came out slowly. Sir, its mass is equal to a small moon. Several officers gasped quietly. A moon-sized ship was something the Empire had never encountered before. Even the largest Imperial supercarriers were only a fraction of that size. Another officer spoke nervously. Is it a station? Raylan shook his head. No, sir. It's moving too fast. The object continued traveling toward the sector at incredible speed. Its energy signature was unlike anything the scanners had ever seen. Strange pulses of energy radiated from its surface. The computer began issuing warning messages. Extreme energy readings detected. Unidentified weapon systems detected. Danger level, critical. The commander turned toward the communication screen where Captain Elias Ward still stood. You knew about this. Ward did not deny it. Yes. The commander's voice became sharp. What is it? Ward paused before answering. For centuries, humanity has been watching the outer edges of the galaxy. We discovered something moving between the stars. Something very old. Something very dangerous. The commander frowned. You expect us to believe a single unknown object frightened humanity enough to build fleets like this? Ward shook his head. It wasn't a single object. Raylan looked back at the scanners. His heart suddenly sank. More signals were appearing behind the first object. Faint at first, then clearer. Dozens of them. Each one massive. Each one massive. Each one moving in the same direction. Toward Imperial territory. Raylan's voice trembled. Sir, there are more. The holographic display zoomed out automatically. Dart shapes slowly appeared across the outer edge of the star map. 1, 3, 10, 20. All of them enormous. All of them approaching. One officer whispered in disbelief. That's an invasion fleet. That's an invasion fleet. But it was unlike any fleet the Empire had ever seen. These objects did not look like ships. They were irregular shapes. Some looked like giant mechanical structures. Others resembled living creatures made of metal and energy. Their surfaces pulsed with strange, glowing patterns. The Empire had never recorded anything like them. The commander turned back toward Ward. You brought them here. Ward shook his head again. No. They were already coming, for centuries. The commander's patience finally broke. You expect us to believe this story about ancient monsters from outside the galaxy? Ward answered calmly. You are free to believe whatever you want, but your scanners are already showing the truth. Everyone in the command room looked back at the holographic map. The strange fleet continued moving closer, and its speed was terrifying. At their current velocity, they would reach the outer Imperial systems within days. The commander turned back to Ward. If this is real, why warn us? Ward's answer was simple. Because this is not just humanity's war, it's everyone's. The room fell silent again. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had defeated countless enemies. But this felt different. Raylan watched the scanner readings carefully. The approaching fleet was still accelerating, and the energy levels coming from those objects were enormous. Far beyond Imperial weapons. Then another alarm suddenly sounded. A new reading appeared on the screen. The first alien object had changed course. It was no longer moving toward the outer sector. It was moving directly toward the Imperial patrol fleet that humanity had disabled earlier. Raylan's eyes widened. Sir, it's targeting the patrol ships. The commander immediately spoke. Can they move? Raylan checked the status. No, sir. Their engines are still offline. The patrol fleet was helpless. 20 Imperial ships drifting through empty space, and something massive was now approaching them. Captain Ward's voice came through the speakers again. We can still help them. The commander looked at him. Help. Ward nodded. If our fleet engages the threat now, we can destroy it before it reaches your systems. The commander hesitated, trusting humanity went against everything the Empire believed. But the scanner display showed the truth. The object was only minutes away from the stranded patrol ships. If it attacked them, they would have no chance. The commander slowly turned to his officers. Then he spoke the words that no Imperial leader had said for thousands of years. Authorize cooperation with the human fleet. Raylan looked up in surprise. Human warships across the sector suddenly changed formation. Hundreds of them accelerated toward the approaching alien object. Their engines glowed brightly as they moved into attack positions, and for the first time since the Empire had ruled the stars, they were not leading the battle. Humanity was. The command room inside the Imperial station had never been this tense before. For thousands of years, the Galactic Empire had always been the strongest power in every battle. But now the situation was different. Now the Empire was watching someone else take the lead. Across the massive holographic star map, hundreds of human warships were accelerating toward the unknown object approaching the stranded Imperial patrol fleet. The blue glow of their engines lit up the darkness of space. They moved with perfect coordination. No confusion, no hesitation. It was as if every ship already knew exactly where it needed to be. Raylan watched the scanner display closely. The human fleet was spreading into a wide formation. Their ships surrounded the approaching alien object from multiple directions. The computer began calculating the size of the threat again. The result appeared on the screen. Object diameter, 46 kilometers. That was larger than most Imperial space stations. But what frightened the officers even more was the object's energy output. Its power readings were still increasing. The commander spoke quietly. "Captain Ward, what exactly is that thing?" The human captain appeared again on the communications screen. His face looked serious now. "That is a Vanguard unit." The commander frowned. "Vanguard?" Ward nodded. "It's a scout." Several officers laughed nervously. "A scout?" one repeated. "If that thing is only a scout, then what is the rest of the fleet?" Ward did not answer immediately. Instead, he said something that made the room grow silent, something much worse. The unknown object continued moving forward. The stranded Imperial patrol ships floated directly in its path. Suddenly, the object changed shape. Sections of its surface opened. Large structures unfolded outward like mechanical wings. Raylan's scanners exploded with warning signals. Energy spike detected. The commander leaned forward. "What is it doing?" Ward answered calmly. "It's charging a weapon." "How powerful?" Ward looked directly at the commander. "Powerful enough to destroy a planet." Silence filled the room. The Empire had many powerful weapons, but a single shot capable of destroying a planet was rare, and this thing was only a scout. Raylan suddenly shouted, "It's firing!" A massive beam of dark energy shot from the alien structure. The beam moved faster than any weapon the Empire had seen before. But before it could reach the helpless patrol ships, the human fleet moved. Hundreds of human warships fired simultaneously. Their weapons were unlike Imperial cannons. Instead of bright energy beams, they fired streams of concentrated blue light. The beams struck the alien object from every direction. The giant structure shook violently. Its weapon beam flickered. Then the human fleet fired again. This time the impact was even stronger. Large sections of the alien structure began breaking apart. Pieces of metal and glowing fragments drifted away into space. Raylan stared in disbelief. That thing survived planetary weapons, and the humans just destroyed it in seconds. The alien structure tried to fire again, but the human fleet moved faster. Dozens of ships launched smaller attack drones. The drones surrounded the object and began striking weak points along its surface. Within moments, the giant alien structure exploded. A massive shockwave spread across space. The blast lit up the entire sector. When the light finally faded, nothing remained of the alien scout. The stranded Imperial patrol ships were still intact. The command room slowly began breathing again. The commander turned toward the communication screen. "You saved our fleet." Ward nodded slightly. "Yes." The commander studied the human captain carefully. "For centuries, we believed humanity was weak." Ward shook his head. "No. You believed we were quiet." The commander looked back at the scanner display. More alien signals were still approaching from the outer edge of the galaxy, dozens of them, and each one was much larger than the scout that had just been destroyed. Raylan spoke nervously. "Sir, the rest of that fleet will reach the sector soon." The commander nodded slowly. For the first time in Imperial history, the Empire needed help. He turned back toward Captain Ward. "What happens now?" Ward answered calmly. "Now the real battle begins." Behind him, thousands of human warships began moving into formation. Massive carriers, heavy battle cruisers, ships even larger than the ones already fighting. Entire human armadas were gathering across the sector, preparing for war, not against the Empire, but against something far more dangerous. And at that moment, the Empire finally understood something important. Humanity had never been preparing to fight them. Humanity had been preparing to something much worse, something that was now coming for the entire galaxy.